Contrary to popular belief, I don't just make videos about whiskey, I also quite like drinking the stuff. So here are 5 whiskies that I've been drinking this month. Welcome back, Dram Fam, to the Whisky Diary. I don't generally just buy whiskey to make videos about it. Usually it's the other way round. I like to make videos about a lot of the whiskies that I buy. Drinking whiskey is a massive kind of passion for me. It is a hobby, but so is filmmaking and making videos. So I tied the two together. But fundamentally, I am a whiskey drinker. The problem is a lot of the whiskies that I buy, I just don't feel video worthy. That's not to say they're not good quality whiskies that I think others could enjoy, but when I buy a bottle or when I try it, there are some whiskies I just think I need to make a video about this. But other whiskies I would just rather enjoy for myself than go to the effort of analysing and making a video about them. I generally have a bit of a kind of philosophy about what whiskies I'm going to make a video about. I want the whiskies I make videos about to represent quality. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that I actually like them, but I feel that those whiskies are good quality whiskies. I'd like them to be affordable so that people can actually buy them, you know. I'm not going to be out here reviewing £1,000 bottles of Macallan or whatever else. I mean, £1,000 for a lot of Macallan is fairly cheap, but they're not really the whiskies that I drink, and therefore they're not really the whiskies that I'm going to make videos about. I want the whiskies to be available. There's no point in me sitting here making a video about a whiskey that literally no one can buy. That doesn't help anyone. And in some cases, I might review a whiskey that doesn't meet the criteria above because it is supportive to maybe another creator or is supportive to the whiskey community as a whole. Obviously, not every whiskey I make a video about is going to match all of those criteria, but I would like it to match as many as possible. And again, it is just down to feel. If I don't want to make a video about the whiskey, I probably won't. Now, there are many whiskies which I buy which don't fit into many of those categories above, but sometimes I feel like I still want to talk about them. And I thought this would be a fantastic format to do it. Now, my palate tends to kind of ebb and flow. Sometimes all I want is peat, just peat, and then I'll spend all my time drinking heavily peated whiskies. Other times I want something super easy drinking, especially like with the weather as well. I generally find as it starts to get colder, I lean more towards the peaty ones. As it gets warmer, I lean towards lighter whiskies. And because of that ebb and flow, there are bottles that might not get touched for 6 months of the year on the shelf, whereas others I'll keep going back to over and over again in order to give those whiskies kind of the best chance at being drunk, because fundamentally I'm all about drinking the whiskey that I buy. I tend to grab a handful of bottles kind of every week or so. I'll grab some off and they're the ones which I'm going to kind of focus on. It didn't even start as an intentional thing. I just started grabbing bottles off the shelf, sitting at my desk or something with some friends, and they'd sit on my desk for the whole week, and every time I went to get a dram, I'd just end up going to those bottles. I think it's every few weeks or so, I'll just grab a few bottles off the shelf and I'll work my way through those. Now, some may go back on the shelf and be replaced with others if I'm not feeling them. Some may actually sit off the shelf for weeks at a time. But I really try and focus on a handful of bottles and really get to know them. And so here is what I've been drinking in the last month or so. Now we're going to start with this. This is a Glasgow 1770, and this was the Somerton Club bottling. I've spoken about the Somerton Club in the past. It is a monthly, well, it's not monthly, it's every 2 month whiskey club, £50 a pop, generally really good, interesting whiskies. This is a really interesting one, bottled at 52.2%. It is a vatting of both peated and unpeated whiskies. The peated malt was peated to about 50 ppm. It spent 3 years in ex-bourbon and then about 2 years, I think it was, in virgin oak. It's a no age statement. It's about 5 years old and it's got beautiful colour, and it is a lovely whiskey. Now this is actually still available. You can get it from the Somerton website. You do have to be a member, so it's £50 for the membership, and that's like £50 every 2 months or so. But you can then buy this directly from the website for £60 or thereabouts. Let me check that actually. Yeah, so it was £50 as a member's bottle, and it's now £60 that you can buy it from kind of the back stock. I will say I had a bit of a gripe. So I have actually reviewed this, and I'll drop a link to the review above or in the description down below. One of my gripes with this, that it was a 50 centilitre bottle, and since then I am pleased to say they have changed and made them all 70 centilitre bottles, and they have not changed the price. So that is a fantastic win for whiskey drinkers and an awesome thing for them to do as a business. So what do I like about this whiskey? Honestly, it's sweet and it's peaty and it's delicious. The nose starts so like sweet and gentle and peaty, and then as soon as you get into it, it is super rich and juicy. It is such a conflicting whiskey between the nose and the palate, and it works so incredibly well. And there's just enough complexity. It has a relatively long kind of peppery finish, at least to my palate at the minute anyway. This for me is just a good example of really good quality whiskey for a relatively reasonable price, in my opinion. So, moving on. Weirdly, another bottle that I've reviewed. This is the Clydeside Stobcross. Now, this is a vatting of about 80% bourbon, 20% sherried whiskies. Bottled at 46%. What is fantastic about this is it's only £45 from their website, which, although it's only 3 years old and a lot of people complain about that, I do think it's got a fair old whack of flavour. So much so, I'm going to drink some. What I love about this, the nose is so like sugary and tropical. A bit of like a candy kind of nose. But then the palate, like juicy, peppery, spicy apple. Now, the reason I've liked this so much is where it's been quite warm for me up here. I mean, it was too hot in the summer to drink pretty much anything. But this for me was just such like a big summer, easy drinking dram, and it was only £45, which in my opinion is a really good price for this whiskey. It may not be the richest, most, it's not really a whiskey you've really got to work for like you necessarily would with the Glasgow we had before it, but this is just a super easy drinker, incredibly accessible, especially for beginners. But anyway, moving on. Now this is very interesting indeed. This is an 8-year-old Ben Nevis that's been bottled by Dram Mor. Bottled up at a whopping 57.9%. It's been finished in a first fill PX hogshead, and at 8 years old, that is the natural colour. I'm really struggling to get a good shot on that, but it is literally like, it's so dark. Also, this is absolutely like to my palate. This is very much the kind of whiskey that I've been drinking, well, at least that I've been buying a lot of recently. I'm really leaning in to these super like juicy, thick, indulgent whiskies. The nose on this is almost like Vimto, man. It's so like fruity, and you know how you get like diluting juice like squash? It's like Vimto squash. It's so pungent. On the palate, it's super like sticky, sickly sweet with like almost like a smoky meatiness to it. It's completely unpeated, but the flavour is so full on. It literally tastes like smoky and meaty. Finish is massive, almost like charred. So this was £68 a bottle, and again, the opposite to the Clydeside Stobcross. This is something you've got to absolutely like sit down and chew through. I can only really have about a dram of that at a time. You're not going to be racing through bottles and bottles of this stuff. It really is something you have to work towards. I can imagine for a lot of people it is going to be way too much, but for me at the moment I'm absolutely loving it. I will say I've got a couple of other Dram Mors. I've got a Kalila, a 6-year-old Kalila, which I absolutely love. I've got an 8-year-old Ben Nevis, which was finished in a white port cask, which is absolutely exceptional for the opposite reasons of this. It is like drinking vanilla ice cream or like birthday cake. It's insane. And I've got a Tullabarden somewhere. I want to say it's 9 years old, but I don't actually remember. But that, again, it's just such a good quality whiskey. And I'm pretty sure all of these were around the £65-70 mark, which, granted, that's quite a lot of money for a whiskey. But I feel like with these, you really are like getting your money's worth. Dram Mor have been such an incredible bottler for me. Their last few releases have been absolutely exceptional. Moving on to something a little bit different, we have this. This is the Murray McDavid Safe Haven Mystery Malt. It's 6 years old. It says on here the region is a trade secret, but a bit of googling. This is a 6-year-old Lechig. I actually had a chat with the guys at Whiskey Baron about this on a podcast, which I think comes out in a few weeks. But you know, we sat down with a handful of Lechigs, and this one performed very, very well indeed. It's a Jimenez Spinola PX. I don't really know what that is, but it's some kind of sherry, and it is absolutely fantastic. The playoff between a ashy, salty, delicate, no, it's not really delicate though, is it? It's like an ashy, salty nose, and then this juicy, fruity palate that's a constant switch between peaty and fruity all the way through from start to finish. But the thing that really excites me about this is the fact that it's £44 a bottle, and it's bottled up at 50%. This is a whiskey that I generally find really, really exciting. The first time I had this was with a guy called Whiskey with Molly, a guy called Ben, in the pot still in Glasgow. And he went to the bar, he came back with 2 of these, and then we both sat there in silence for 5 minutes while we went online and both bought a bottle, because it genuinely is that good for £44. And lastly, something that I thought was really, really interesting is this. This is the Edradour 10-year-old cask strength virgin oak. Pretty much does what it says on the tin kind of whiskey. It's a 10-year-old. It is bottled up at 60.8%, which is insane. But it has been all 10 years full maturation in a virgin oak cask. Edradour is such an interesting distillery, really small distillery up in Pitlochry, which is not too far, a couple of hours north of Glasgow. Really small little distillery that produce exceptional whiskies, especially for the money. Now, this one was a little bit more pricey. I think this was around £90 a bottle, but I bought a dram of this in the pot still, and I immediately went online and bought one. It is one of the most full-flavoured, richest whiskies I think I've ever drunk. The nose has got like a really beautiful, almost sickly sweet candy corn note to it. But then the palate, it's like, it's literally like bourbon on steroids, like a much richer, deeper, more complex bourbon. Coffee and chocolate and roasted hazelnuts going on in there, with really, really like a really good quality malt note that sits underneath. On the finish, pralines, berries, it kind of gets fruitier as it goes. The main thing for me though is this was just one of the most full flavoured whiskies I think I've ever drunk, which is why as soon as I tried it I had to buy a bottle. As with the Dram Mor, this is one of those whiskies that you kind of have to like sit and chew through. You can't just sit there tanning glass after glass of this. It is a lot like many of the other Edradour whiskies, but this one's just kind of turned up to 11. But anyway, that's enough from me. Thank you all very much for watching. If you've liked this video, please do click the like button. And if you would like to support the channel, please do consider subscribing. Let me know down in the comments if you like this kind of slightly less formal, less structured episode where we just go through things that I like to drink. And let me know if you've tried any of these and what you think of them. And on that note, Slàinte mhath.